review of Joker, directed by Tod Phillips, the guy who directed The Hangover, parts 1, 2 and 3. I'm just back from seeing Joker. I'm still processing it slightly in my head in terms of what I actually thought, so I'm not sure how this will come out in terms of where I was at. It's been quite a controversial film, maybe had a backlash to the backlash. I thought it was maybe slightly more dangerous than it wants to be, but maybe not quite as clever as it intends to be, but is anchored by a truly astounding, or maybe not astounding because you kind of expect it, but a truly fantastic performance from Joaquin Phoenix with his fascinating face and his amazing physicality and that real sense of danger that he brings to the role. And some individual sequences which are really outstanding. There's a whole sequence on the subway which I thought was amazing. All the dancing stuff has a real sense of threat around it. As a film overall, maybe it doesn't quite add up to. It has a kind of pseudo-intellectualism at the heart of it when it talks about some of the reasons that Joker does some of the things that he does. Some of those feel quite tokenistic. I was in the pub afterwards and talking quite a lot about The Catcher in the Rye or Taxi Driver and things that depict people who are ostracised or who are disturbed, and the kind of responsibility of how those things work and how they depict their subjects. Like The Catcher in the Rye is one of my favourite books, and it's maybe been taken as something talismanic by people who've done terrible things, like the guy who shot John Lennon, or Taxi Driver takes you kind of inside the journey, doesn't it, of Travis Bickle and his move towards murdering people. But Taxi Driver is quite ironic, isn't it? It looks at Bickle from you get the sense of irony, even though you see him at the end kind of win, and you get this kind of dreamy sequence about how he's got everything that he thought he wanted and what he's achieved. It's still quite an ironic film. Joker's an unironic film. It very much kind of beats along to the character. And the accusations that have been levelled against it, that it shows somebody who's almost like an incel, somebody who is misogynistic and somebody who feels they're at the bottom of society and then resorts to violence and kind of, wins, and it's held up as somebody heroic because of that. The film does sort of do that, and putting that within the framework of a mainstream superhero origin movie does feel really subversive and really daring and really dangerous. And compared to how boring the last 50 Marvel movies have been, to do something like this and to see a director and an actor kind of let off the chain with a really big mainstream intellectual property like a villain within the Batman universe, and to do what they want with it, is to really to be admired. It is really bold and astounding. But whether it quite has the kind of intellectual backbone to back up what it's doing, I'm not sure. It talks about things like mental health and child abuse and kind of class difference and things, and it throws a lot of things into the mix like that, but none of those are detailed enough to really convince you. Therefore it starts to feel like they're slightly tokenistic. It's incredibly well made. Like, it has the cinematography is terrific. It's really well edited. It has a great soundtrack. It has a lovely smooth flow to it. It's absolutely an homage to Taxi Driver very much in terms of the visual style and the vision of Gotham as being a bit like Taxi Driver's New York in the 70s. Very much the king of comedy, which maybe is one of Scorsese's maybe more underseen films. So if you haven't seen the king of comedy, this film inspires you to go and watch it, then by all means do. And the casting of Robert De Niro as the talk show host is very much like a straight homage to the king of comedy, and it owes quite a lot to Network as well in terms of like the frustrated man being on TV. And it does build up to a really tense sequence at the end. No spoilers in terms of what it is. And it does have a genuinely incredible performance in the lead role. I mean, he's such an intense actor, and he's got such an interesting face, and he's so lithe, and he's obviously lost so much weight. You can see like the bones on his body, and they light it so that you can see the muscles under his skin and the points on his spine, those kind of things. And Joaquin Phoenix has been in films for a long time, so I'm kind of familiar with his kind of younger face, who's kind of like him in Gladiator, or him playing Johnny Cash, and to see him as this kind of like very gaunt, haggard figure in itself is kind of disturbing. And he's not doing like a kind of try-hard performance. He's fully committed. It is The way that I suppose, Heath Ledger's performance, which I very much prefer, really, is because of the context of the film, but the way that Ledger was so unexpected, I suppose, in what he does, and so kind of like prickly and disturbing. And this is very much a full tilt, kind of like, what would it be like to be around somebody who is this disturbed kind of performance? And he is actually frightening. There are bits. It's a very simple scene, in the first 10 minutes or so, where he's just on the bus speaking to a child, where he is genuinely frightening. It does bring out that whole idea of what would it be like to be around this person, but whether you want to spend 2 hours in the company of that person, and whether that really adds up to much more than he is deeply disturbing, I don't know. And particularly the handling of the mental health stuff, which is quite vaguely done in the film, feels a little bit tokenistic. I didn't think about the kind of Batman side of things at all as I was watching it, but if you come into it as a kind of DC fan or a superhero fan, maybe it plays out quite differently. Like, it wears those kind of homages, not homages, but it wears the kind of like the actual Batman mythology stuff quite lightly. It maybe delves into a little bit too much towards the end, which I didn't particularly enjoy, but it does, it doesn't go too far into that. It doesn't do anything that directly links it to any of the other Batman films or any of the other Jokers, really. It's interesting to see a film which is so divisive and that is so potentially genuinely dangerous, and that sits within the mainstream, and clearly lots of people are going to see it. It's a weird thing where, like real extreme violence gets a film of 15, but if you have any boobs or bums or anything like that, that gets a film of 18. It's really violent. There are a couple of moments that made me go like, oh, that's really not very nice. Now, I don't mind violence, but I did think, like, this is a 15, this is a film that kids can see. I mean, I saw lots of awful, horrific films about, like, cannibals and all sorts, when I was, like, 12. So it would be hypocritical to say that kids shouldn't watch it. But it does run the risk of being a kind of celebratory film about, masculine anger, which doesn't feel like what the world needs right now. And it doesn't have a real sense of irony in terms of how it plays that out. So you do come out of it. I felt unsettled and a bit uncomfortable and a bit disturbed by it in terms of what it is and how it acts in the context of the film that it is. But to watch a film that is disturbing and is going to get such a mainstream release, I guess, is far more interesting than to watch Avengers 5. Tony meets his great cousin, grandson, or something. So it's definitely worth a watch, and it does have an incredible performance, but it's one of those films where you think, what would it be without this performance? I'm not sure it would be much. It does feature a Gary Glitter song in it, and I probably thought we shouldn't watch Kevin Spacey films or listen to Gary Glitter songs anymore, but apparently we can. Maybe they didn't know it was by Gary Glitter, I don't know. But it did make me go like, wow, if this is a deliberate choice, this really is bold stuff. Let's, we'll have this kind of like, serial killing psychopath dancing along to the songs of a glam rock paedophile. I don't know, maybe it's an accident. Fascinating, really interesting. At points has its real longeurs. At point I did think, why would I want to watch 2 hours in the company of this person? It's not necessarily gripping, but it's usually interesting, and it has the odd flamboyant sequence. Like again, I won't give any of it away. When the Joker commits his first crime, he has this kind of episode in a bathroom. It does feel genuinely subversive and interesting and dark, and something else. So it's a must-see, but it feels like a film that doesn't have the intellectual, it doesn't have the detail underneath it to really justify quite how dark it then goes, and it ends up maybe going a bit darker than it deserves, which makes it feel like it's a film that is a little bit irresponsible in terms of what it is, but far more interesting to watch something that's spicy than something as bland as the everyday Marvel output. I can't see Ant-Man and the Wasp 3 or something like having this kind of edge. So yeah, it's a must see. And it's a great performance. Is it a great film? Not really, but it's certainly something that it can't be ignored, and you'll definitely react to. So yeah, give it a go. But I don't think it's one where I could recommend exactly what anyone will think about it. I think people have quite different reactions to it, which in itself is kind of interesting. So yeah, give it a go. Make your own mind up.